It is late at night when Shaw and Truman step through piles of bodies left behind by Aaron and Nanite Boy to locate Horn's charred corpse. Furious, Truman insists that it is time to do things his way. Willoughby must be cleansed and processed by the end of the month. Meanwhile, Charlie and Monroe rescue Porter from the diner, where he has been imprisoned. They rush him to an old farmhouse where Miles' life hangs by a thread. Porter quickly gets to work, tending to Miles' festering arm. The next day, Aaron stands over Cynthia's grave and recalls the words of Nanite Boy, who mentioned Spring City, Oklahoma. When Porter tries to apologize for turning Aaron and Cynthia over to the Patriots, Aaron will not hear of it. Everyone runs into the farmhouse when Miles stirs. An impatient Monroe sends everyone out of the room and demands that Miles divulge the location of his son. They had a deal, after all. Miles offers to take Monroe to his son, Connor. Rachel is pleased to think Monroe is leaving them, but Miles insists he is still useful. Furthermore, he wants Rachel to accompany them on the trip to find Connor. At a White House cocktail party, Neville and Jason stand by their new boss, Roger Allenford, as Deputy Secretary Victor Doyle introduces his wife, Rebecca, to Chief of Staff Bill Harlow. Later, Neville finds Julia alone and shows her a vial of colorless liquid with which he intends to poison Harlow. It will look like a heart attack. When Julia fears Neville is hesitating, she assures him that her husband is next in line for Harlow's job. Once Doyle is in place, she will persuade him to promote Neville. Charlie wakes up and discovers that Aaron has disappeared, so she and Porter split up to try to find him. With Aaron long gone, Porter notices 2 Patriot wagons laden with cargo pulling into Willoughby. Apparently, a third wagon is on the way. After asking Charlie to help identify the cargo, Porter is stunned when she kills the driver without blinking. Surprisingly, they find Patriots carting oranges into Willoughby. Monroe is not happy to find that Miles sent Connor to live with family in City Puesta del Sol, Mexico. After learning that Connor's relatives died 8 years ago, the group retires to a bar to question the locals. When a leader of the town's Nunes cartel approaches Monroe, Miles immediately recognizes Connor, who resembles his father in bad attitude if nothing else. Nunes calls Connor away, but Monroe refuses to leave without talking to his son. Late that night, Monroe asks Connor to join him on a quest to get the Monroe Republic back together, which is when Connor takes his father captive. Nunes wants to meet Monroe. At another White House reception, Neville is just about to poison Harlow's drink when Allenford calls him away. Later that night, Allenford returns to his room very upset, carrying a folder stamped with the Patriot's Eye of Providence. When he leaves, the room's sentry, Jason, sneaks in to look at the file's very disturbing contents. Meanwhile, Julia scolds Neville for blowing their chance to poison Harlow. Neville promises Julia she will get what is coming to her. Once this is all over, Neville will delight in gutting Julia's husband. Moments later, Neville sneaks into Harlow's room and jams the poison down his gullet. The next day, Truman calls the residents of Willoughby into the town square. The supply lines have opened up, and he has oranges to prove it. Life will only be getting better under Patriot rule. Little do the townspeople know, Shaw and his men are injecting some of the oranges with something. Aaron makes it to Spring City, which seems to be nothing more than a ghost town. Haunted by memories of Cynthia and Nanite Boy, Aaron calls out to the empty town. A voice calls out his name, and Aaron turns to see Grace. After the initial shock of seeing Aaron wears off, Grace explains that she has been living alone in Spring City since events in the tower, and there is another surprise in store for Aaron. His wife Priscilla is passed out on Grace's couch. It turns out she has been suffering from visions similar to Aaron's. The fireflies, dead people, etc., and her dead father told her to find Grace. In fact, Priscilla's husband thought she was so crazy that he took the kids and abandoned her. Grace knows the Nanites directed the couple to her. Clearly, the Nanites have crossed into consciousness. Perhaps they have even learned to network. Since Aaron wrote the original code for the Nanites, he gave them their mind, and since Priscilla helped, she is like their mother. Priscilla wonders why their friend Peter, who also helped write the code, was not called to Spring City, too. Regardless, the Nanites are everywhere, and apparently, they have a mind of their own. Connor takes Monroe to Nunes' villa, where a flayed corpse is displayed as evidence of what happens to those who fail the boss. It is clear that Nunes relies on Connor, whom he has raised like a son, and he is pleased with his offering of Monroe. When Nunes asks Connor for his take on Monroe's fate, Connor suggests selling him to the highest bidder. Lucky for Monroe, Miles and Rachel are already plotting his rescue. However, when Miles reaches him, Monroe refuses to leave, preferring to stay so Connor can take credit for his capture. Unfortunately, Miles is captured, too, and dumped alongside Monroe in a locked cell. Charlie and her grandfather spy on Truman and the Patriots as they erect a large armed camp. Porter spies his old friend, Lloyd Welliver, and wants to retrieve him immediately, but Charlie knows there is no way. Later that night, Porter sneaks into the Patriot camp, only to discover Welliver is already dead. Having guessed Porter would go after his friend, Charlie rescues him from a guard. Moments later, they are both captured. Neville delivers congratulatory flowers to Julia, an excuse to ask whether she has forced her husband to hire Neville onto his security detail. She has not. Neville is further annoyed to discover Jason has stolen documents from Roger Allenford that lay out plans for numerous re-education programs, all run by Julia's husband Doyle. Having survived the torture of re-education himself, Jason is adamant to have something done against it. Late that night, Neville tells Julia that Doyle is responsible for nearly killing Jason. Now he wants her to get him into Doyle's office to steal what he needs to blackmail his way onto the security detail. Julia warns that she may not be able to protect Neville if he sneaks into Doyle's office, which feeds Neville's paranoia. Miles and Monroe argue long into the night. Monroe wanted to give Connor some help, and all he has to give is himself, which has of course screwed Miles. Inside his inner sanctum, Nunez toasts Connor to celebrate the capture of Miles. A match set means more money. Somehow, Nunez cannot believe that Connor captured Monroe, the most ruthless man in the world. As a test, he has Connor whip Monroe, who is strung up in front of a crowd. Just when Monroe is on the verge of death, Connor halts the proceedings and asks if they are to actually sell Monroe or bury him, at which Nunez's greed wins out. Rachel has just bribed her way into the inner sanctum when Connor hands her the key to Miles and Monroe's cell, unaware that another of Nunez's henchmen is watching. The three are just running off when they are stopped by Nunez, who has a knife to Connor's throat. Nunez cannot have anyone think that he is weak, and Connor made his choice. When Connor makes a move, Miles, Monroe, and Rachel back him up. After they escape, Connor claims to help Monroe was the first mistake of his life, but he is curious if Monroe can get his republic back. Monroe promises that together, father and son will take back the power and more. Back at the White House, Doyle calls his security detail into his office. Someone broke in. Now he will need more security. Fearing Neville has gone ahead with his plan, Julia sneaks into the camp to scold him, only to realize it was Jason who broke into Doyle's office. Furious that his parents continue to scheme while the country is going to hell in a Patriot's hand, Jason admits to his crime. Just as soldiers come to detain him for questioning, Truman uncuffs Charlie and Porter, hands them masks, and ushers them into a tent sheathed in plastic. It does not take Porter long to realize Truman has a typhus epidemic on his hands, and this is just the beginning. Porter's friend Welliver was the first, and now Truman and the Patriots are rushing to build a quarantine camp in advance of the inevitable outbreak. Porter and Truman may have their differences, but now it is time to work together, or else Willoughby will be lost. Back from Mexico, Connor, Miles, Monroe, and Rachel are stunned to find their hideout empty. It does not take them long to discover Charlie and Porter are nursing the typhus victims at the quarantine camp. With over a dozen dead, Porter desperately needs azithromycin, and if he does not get it soon, the epidemic will rage out of control. Truman is well aware of this. Like it or not, he and Porter are in this together. While the men stay back, Rachel sneaks into the camp to offer her help. Truman demands Rachel give up Miles and Monroe, but Porter talks him out of it for the moment. Tom meets Julia near the Washington Monument with the news. Her husband Doyle is holding Jason for suspicion of breaking and entering his office. If Jason breaks, Neville fears that he will give them both up. When Julia makes it clear that all she cares about is Jason's well-being, Neville insists that she is their best chance at a rescue. Julia flashes back to 2 years after the blackout, when little Jason was dying of starvation. Promising to find food, Neville comes upon a man with plenty of food barbecuing rabbits, but he refuses to share. Neville whips out his knife, but he is too weak to fight off the man and his friend, who beat him badly. Porter thinks the epidemic is typhus, but the disease is not spreading the way it usually would. If only he had time to do some tests. Rachel sends Charlie to collect a blood sample from one of the dead, so she can test it. The result, their typhus was made in a lab, which suggests the Patriots started the outbreak on purpose. Rachel figures the Patriots must have a vaccine, and Porter has an idea of where they might keep it. Rachel gets this message to Miles, who wants to send Connor after the antidote since no one knows who he is. Connor is furious, so Monroe takes him aside. Rachel may be crazy, but they need Miles' help to win back the Republic, which means they are going to do what he asks. Aaron wakes up, only to find Grace has disappeared. Suddenly, he turns to face Cynthia, who tells him he has to face it. Assuming Cynthia is the Nanites, Aaron is angry over the real Cynthia's death. Nana Cynthia assures him that all of his questions will be answered in Lubbock, home of the world's largest concrete cowboy. If he chooses not to go, both he and Priscilla will be in danger. Claiming she is not scared of the Nanites, Priscilla refuses to go to Lubbock. She is just leaving Aaron behind when a tree nearly falls on top of her. Before bed, Julia tells Doyle she has been having nightmares because of the office break-in. Just this once, she wants to know about the guy who did it. All Doyle will say is they are questioning him. Julia flashes back to the past when she was patching up Neville after his fight. They have been going about things all wrong. There are plenty of guys stronger than Tom, but not many who are smarter. It is time for them to play to their strengths. Back in the present, Victor is sleeping when Julia sneaks into his office to find Jason's name on a list and his location in Kenilworth Prison. Connor, Miles, and Monroe sneak into Willoughby under cover of darkness. Miles is stunned to find the Patriots have totally deserted their headquarters with no antidote. Back at the quarantine camp, Rachel deduces the Patriots are killing off undesirable people with their typhus. That is when Porter falls over, the disease's latest victim. When he comes to, he has got a plan. Miles and Monroe kidnap Truman and inject him with a dose of typhus. In the next leg of the plan, Connor puts on a Patriot uniform and escorts Truman back to his office to retrieve the antidote from his safe. Connor has just enough time to put his gun to Truman's head as soldiers bust into the office for a standoff. Julia tells Neville her latest plan. She and Victor will be having lunch with Colonel Henderson and his wife tomorrow. She will leave the back door unlocked so Neville can sneak in, take care of the Colonel and his wife, and then have a little chat with Doyle. The only thing Julia cares about is getting Jason out alive. 2 years after the blackout, Julia demonstrates the same mettle. She convinces the two guys who beat Tom to accept sex with her in exchange for food, giving Neville the chance to kill them both. But there is a hitch to her most recent plan. When Neville breaks into the Colonel's house, Doyle and his men are waiting with guns aimed at Julia. When she demands the return of Jason, Doyle has the couple separated, promising they will never see each other again. Subscribe and hit that like button to help our channel grow. Turn the notifications on so you won't miss any of our new videos. Thanks for watching.